We humans love plastic. It's convenient, it's cheap, it's everywhere. We drink from plastic bottles, we eat from plastic containers, we even wear plastic, sometimes unintentionally. But here's the catch. Plastic doesn't just disappear, it breaks down into tiny pieces, microplastics, and these microplastics are everywhere too. They're in the oceans, the air we breathe, the food we eat, and alarmingly, our brains. Microplastics are tiny pieces of plastic, smaller than 5 millimeters, and they're practically unavoidable. We ingest them, inhale them, and absorb them through our skin. While the presence of microplastics in our guts or lungs is disturbing enough, finding them in the brain is a whole new level of unsettling. The brain, after all, is the command center of our body, responsible for everything we do, think, and feel. How do these microscopic invaders reach our brains? They sneak in through various pathways. One route is through the food chain. Tiny marine animals consume microplastics, and larger fish eat those smaller animals, accumulating the plastic as they go. Guess who's at the top of the food chain? Yep, we humans, consuming plastic-laden seafood. But it's not just seafood. Microplastics have been found in our fruits, vegetables, and even our drinking water. Once in the bloodstream, microplastics face a formidable obstacle: the blood-brain barrier. This barrier acts as a gatekeeper, protecting the brain from harmful substances. However, recent studies have shown that microplastics, particularly those smaller than 200 nanometers, can slip through this barrier, gaining access to our brain tissue. This is a worrying discovery, as it means our brains are directly exposed to these tiny plastic invaders. Section 5. The brain, a magnet for microplastics. A magnet for microplastics. What makes the brain particularly vulnerable to microplastics? This question has puzzled scientists for years. The brain, with its complex network of neurons and synapses, is one of the most vital organs in the human body. Yet, it appears to be particularly susceptible to the invasion of microplastics. These tiny particles, often invisible to the naked eye, can find their way into our bloodstream and eventually make their way to the brain. It seems our brains might actually attract these tiny particles. But why is this the case? One theory suggests that the unique environment of the brain, with its high lipid content and specific protein structures, creates a perfect storm for microplastics to accumulate. These particles can cross the blood-brain barrier, a protective shield that usually keeps harmful substances out, and settle in the brain tissue. Studies suggest that microplastics can bind to proteins found in the brain, essentially sticking to brain cells. This binding process is facilitated by the unique chemical properties of both the microplastics and the brain proteins. Once attached, these particles can cause inflammation and other adverse effects, potentially leading to neurological issues over time. This affinity for brain tissue could explain why microplastic concentrations in the brain are higher than in other organs. Unlike other organs, the brain's environment seems to be more conducive to the accumulation of these particles. This discovery has significant implications for our understanding of how environmental pollutants affect human health, particularly brain health. It's like our brains have a strange attraction to these plastic invaders. This phenomenon raises important questions about the long-term impact of microplastics on brain function and overall health. As research continues, scientists hope to uncover more about how these particles interact with brain cells and what can be done to mitigate their effects. Understanding this could be crucial for developing strategies to protect our brains from these tiny, yet potentially harmful invaders. Section 6. Inflammation and more. The health implications. The presence of microplastics in our brains raises serious concerns about potential health risks. These tiny particles, often less than 5 millimeters in size, can infiltrate our bodies through various means, including the air we breathe, the water we drink, and even the food we consume. Once inside, they can travel through the bloodstream and cross the blood-brain barrier, a protective shield that usually keeps harmful substances out of the brain. While research is still ongoing, some studies suggest links between microplastic exposure and inflammation, oxidative stress, and other harmful effects. Inflammation is the body's natural response to injury or infection, but chronic inflammation in the brain can lead to a host of problems. Oxidative stress, on the other hand, occurs when there is an imbalance between free radicals and antioxidants in the body, leading to cell and tissue damage, and even cell death in the brain. Neurons, the primary cells in the brain, are particularly vulnerable to these stressors. Damage to neurons can disrupt communication between different parts of the brain, leading to cognitive impairments and other neurological issues. This damage is not just limited to the elderly, it can affect individuals of all ages, potentially leading to early onset neurological disorders. These effects could potentially contribute to neurological disorders, cognitive decline, and other health problems. For instance, conditions like Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, and other forms of dementia have been linked to chronic inflammation and oxidative stress. While it's too early to say definitively that microplastics cause these conditions, the potential connection is alarming and warrants further investigation. We are just beginning to scratch the surface of understanding the long-term consequences of these tiny plastic particles on our brain health. More comprehensive studies are needed to fully grasp the extent of the damage and to develop strategies to mitigate these risks. Until then, it is crucial to raise awareness about the potential dangers of microplastics and to take steps to reduce our exposure to these pervasive pollutants. Section 7. Real-life examples, a cause for concern. Evidence is mounting that microplastics are not just passive bystanders in our brains. Studies have found microplastics in the brain tissue of both humans and animals, suggesting widespread exposure. Researchers have even observed behavioral changes in animals exposed to high levels of microplastics, including anxiety-like behavior and impaired cognitive function. These findings highlight the potential for real-world impacts on both human and animal health. Section 8. Turning the tide on microplastics. The discovery of microplastics in our brains is a wake-up call. We need to act now to reduce plastic pollution and protect our health. Governments can implement policies to limit single-use plastics and encourage sustainable alternatives. Companies can innovate and invest in biodegradable materials. And we, as individuals, can make conscious choices to reduce our plastic consumption, opting for reusable alternatives and supporting businesses committed to sustainability. Section 9. The future of microplastics and us. The story of microplastics and our brains is still unfolding. These tiny particles, often invisible to the naked eye, have found their way into every corner of our environment. From the deepest oceans to the highest mountains, microplastics are everywhere. They are in the water we drink, the food we eat, and even the air we breathe. Scientists are only beginning to understand the full impact of these particles on human health, particularly on our brains. We need more research to fully understand the extent of exposure, the long-term health consequences, and the potential for microplastics to cross the blood-brain barrier. This barrier is crucial for protecting our brains from harmful substances, but there is growing concern that microplastics might be able to breach it. If they do, the implications could be profound, affecting cognitive function, neurological development, and overall brain health, and the most effective ways to mitigate the risks. Researchers are exploring various strategies, from developing new materials that break down more easily to improving waste management systems. Public awareness campaigns are also crucial, as they can drive behavioral changes that reduce plastic use and increase recycling rates. Community cleanup efforts, like beach cleanups, play a vital role in removing existing plastic waste from our environment. But one thing is clear: these tiny plastic particles are a big problem. By raising awareness, supporting research, and making conscious choices, we can all contribute to the solution. Simple actions, like reducing single-use plastics, choosing products with less packaging, and supporting policies that aim to reduce plastic pollution, can make a significant difference. It's a collective effort that requires participation from individuals, communities, industries, and governments. We can work towards a future where our brains and our planet are free from the threat of microplastic pollution. Imagine a world where our oceans are clean, our air is pure, and our food is free from contamination. This vision is achievable if we all take responsibility and act now. Together, we can create a healthier, more sustainable future for ourselves and generations to come.